It is Anthony Black,
Mhm.
the 6'7" guard from Arkansas, 19 years of age. You see him going in drafts like as high as 6, sometimes out of the lottery. I don't really think he falls out of the lottery. A lot of people are very interested in him, say, going to Washington at pick number 8. But as we've talked about, the shooting is a real concern. Probably the comparisons we see a lot with him are Lonzo Ball, a really, really high-level defender who is super tall, and has shooting concerns. I don't think he's the passer or the transition guy that what Lonzo Ball was or turned into. But defensively, he's right up there. The size is obviously awesome. But we touched on it a little bit earlier. The offensive stuff is a real problem. What is it? What's the major concern? Is it shooting from 3 exclusively? Is it finishing? Is it hesitancy? Like, is it all those things sort of combined?
I think it is a good combination of all of those three. He never really looked comfortable. I'm an Razorback fan. I'm from Arkansas. That's where I hail from. So I have a vested interest in the success of that team. And one thing that I noticed with him is that the reluctancy, the shooting from 3, that was something that he really struggled with. And then, although he has the athleticism to get past people, the finishing numbers weren't always consistent either, right? And the creativity in his finishes weren't really something that I was a big fan of as well. But I think that at his size, the way that he sees the court, that those are things that could come in time. Like, he can grow to become a passable 3-point shooter, and with his athleticism and a more open court. And again, Arkansas wasn't a team built for success for him to grow in those areas either. When he and Trayvon Brazile got injured, those were the floor spacers. So with him and Ricky Council, Nick Smith being out of the lineup as well, Anthony Black kind of suffered from a condensed court and a defensive scheme that really hampered his ability to grow in those areas. But I think that the scoring is the biggest concern, but he's another one of these guys that can literally do everything else.
In terms of passing, because there aren't huge amounts of high-end point guards. There's obviously Scoot, but then it's just wings. It's wings and forwards, and there's not huge amounts of point guards in here. We talked about Hood Schifino already. There's Cason Wallace. There's Anthony Black. What does his passing and his vision look? Where does that compare to these other point guards?
I think it's favorable. I think there is a clear step down once you get past Scoot. But once you start getting into some of these other guards, obviously Ben Thompson, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that his passing was on another level as well. But you start getting these other guys like Keontae, Cason Wallace, things like that. There's not a huge, vast difference in their playmaking or the way that they see the floor. Actually, I think Black sees the floor the best out of those guys, but his passing numbers are pretty similar. I just think that the upside for him to grow as a playmaker is a little bit better compared to those aforementioned guys with Wallace and George.
We talk about point guards and their inability to shoot at times, and whether it goes in or not sometimes isn't always the full story. Like, is he reluctant to shoot those threes? If he is left open, as we saw last season with Russell Westbrook so many times, will he shoot it, or will he be looking to do something different?
It really depends on the matchup, but for the most part, he was pretty reluctant. There were times where the defense would scheme him open, and he would hesitate. And he's one of these players with his athleticism that if he is given a runway, he can try to go over the top and finish with like a runner or draw in the defense and kick it out. But there was a lot of reluctancy to be able to put the ball up at all, and Arkansas suffered from that later in the tournament.
So he's an interesting player. Like, how high do you have him? You talk about having Hood Schifino up at 7. Like, where do you have Black as a lottery player?
I have him at 10. I
Okay.
think that he's still a very valuable guy, and I know I'm kind of hitting the negativity a little bit hard here on the show, but again, the court vision is there, the athleticism is there. Players with size and feel typically succeed in the NBA, and I think that the scheme has a lot to do with the efficiency numbers that we're looking at here. So there is a potential upside with him being a high redraft candidate in years to come. He's just, again, at his age, the things he was doing as a freshman are very impressive. And despite his deficiencies, he had a lot of production, and we can't sleep on that defense that he brings. And the ability that an NBA team could draft a guy like Anthony Black and he could come and pick up a tough assignment defensively, full court if necessary, that has a lot of value too. And coaches are going to want players on their team that aren't going to embarrass themselves when they're defending some of the premier players in the NBA.
I had him at number 10 as well, actually. And yeah, a lot of people, when I did my mock draft, like, man, yeah, the Wizards, they've got to take a point guard. And I said, well, to me, there's a really clear delineation between my top 8 guys and the next group, which does include Black and Wallace and George and those sort of players. But yeah, look, again, this size, like if the shooting works out, like, and the defense is already there, like we know those things. If the other stuff comes around, and it doesn't always come around, it could, but it doesn't always. It does have a really interesting sort of overall package of a player. Let's go.